Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor, and I'm going to be talking to you about how the Modi government bet big on sovereign gold bonds, but then found that this led to a whopping 930% increase in its liabilities on these products and is now trying really hard to contain these ballooning costs. What this has meant is that a product that has been very attractive for investors will now not be issued by the government. An analysis of government trade data and its budget documents shows that while the center's liabilities on SGBs have been rising rapidly, its receipts from these bonds have been small in comparison. The bonds haven't been able to also slow India's gold imports, which had been one of the stated aims of the SGB scheme. The reason for the ballooning liabilities, which have the potential to grow to rupees 1.12 lakh crore by 2032, going by market estimates, are partly the design of the SGB scheme itself and partly the government's own actions, such as increasing gold import duties to 15% by July 2022. In all this, the print has learnt that there is displeasure in the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Finance over the design of the SGB scheme. So here's the lowdown on the design. The government launched the SGB scheme in 2015, under which people could buy gold bonds instead of physical gold. They earned returns from this investment if the price of gold increased over the 5-year minimum period they had to hold the bonds. The full maturity period for the bonds is 8 years. In addition, people who bought the bonds also earned interest at the rate of 2.5% on their investments. When asked during a post-budget press conference on 1st Feb this year whether the government was discontinuing the SGB scheme, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said, yes, in a way. Economic Affairs Secretary Ajay Seth, in the same press conference, provided more details on why the government was cooling off on SGBs. Basically, he said that the government's recent experience has been that SGBs are now a form of high-cost borrowing for the government. As a result, the government has chosen not to follow this path, he explained. The government has not issued any SGBs in 2024-25 so far, and the budget documents show that it will not be issuing any in 2025-26 either. The stated aim of the SGB scheme, as laid out in a government press release in 2015, was that it would help in reducing the demand for physical gold by shifting a part of the physical gold purchased every year into gold bonds. The release added that the benefit to the government would be in lower costs of borrowing, since the 2.5% interest to be paid on SGBs would be much lower than the 8 to 9% rate of interest on other forms of government borrowing. The way the scheme was designed, the government would not only have to pay 2.5% interest on the gold bonds, but would also have to repay the bondholders at the current price of gold, not the price at which the bonds were bought. Now, this is an important point because it gives us insight into the government's thinking when it launched the scheme and also its thinking now. From conversations with officials who had been in the finance ministry during the early years of the gold bond scheme, the print has learnt that the assumption in the government at that time was that the price of gold would increase, but at a low and manageable level, and so the government's liabilities on these bonds would be contained. In fact, the government also went several steps further in trying to make SGBs more enticing. In 2017, for example, it significantly hiked the maximum amount of bonds that people could buy from just 0.5 kgs or 500 grams worth of gold to 4 kgs worth of gold now. The government also hiked the import duty on gold significantly. The first hike was in July 2019 when the import duty was raised to 12.88% from 10%. It was subsequently brought down to 10.75 in February 2021, but it was then again hiked sharply to 15% in July 2022. The thinking was that making imported physical gold more expensive would encourage people to buy gold bonds. However, in a bid to check the rising price of gold and the resultant growth in its own liabilities, the government in July 2024 slashed the import duty on gold to 6%. The RBI has also announced the dates for premature redemption of the gold bonds so far issued. So here's how the sovereign gold bond scheme, the bet, actually failed. Basically, a combination of the import duty hikes and global uncertainty meant that the price of gold has risen far faster over the last few years than the government expected. So, while the price of 10 grams of gold stood at rupees 31,640 in March 2019, which was just 1.3% higher than the year before, it jumped to 42,450 by March 2020, a 34% increase in just 1 year. Since then, uncertainties around the Russia Ukraine war and the Israel Palestine conflict have further driven up gold prices, compounded by the government's decision to impose a 15% import duty on gold in July 2022. The price of gold is currently at about rupees 84,450 per 10 grams, more than 2.7 times what it was in March 2017. The aim of the SGB scheme to curtail gold imports has also not come to pass. Gold imports rose to 46.2 billion in 2021-22 from 27.5 billion in 2016-17. They have since fallen to $37.4 billion in 2024-25, but are still far higher than when the SGB scheme was launched. The rising price of gold has also meant that the government's liabilities on account of the SGB scheme have ballooned. Where its liabilities stood at 6,664 crore in 2017-18 on account of this scheme, this figure stood at 68,598 crore by 2023-24, a whopping 930% increase. The total liabilities have since fallen to rupees 60,566 crore in 2024-25, but that's because no new bonds have been issued this financial year. Similarly, these liabilities are budgeted to drop further to rupees 55,000 crore or so in 2025-26 as the government continues to slam the brakes on fresh SGB issuances. With 61 gold bond tranches yet to be redeemed, the government's liability is expected to rise to rupees 1.12 lakh crore by 2032, given current gold prices, according to market estimates. What's worse is that the government has stopped issuing fresh gold bonds at exactly the wrong time. For the bonds so far issued, the liabilities are high because the price of gold has risen since the bonds were issued. But experts say that the price is not likely to rise very much further than this and may even come down if peace breaks out between Russia and Ukraine, as US President Donald Trump is trying to achieve. According to these experts, if gold prices do fall, then gold bonds that had been issued now could actually have earned the government money by the time they are redeemed, even after counting the 2.5% interest rate to be paid. But no new gold bonds are being issued. The original design of the SGB scheme also had a provision for the creation of a gold reserve fund, which would bear the risk of gold price changes. In its 2015 press release, the government had said that the benefit to the government in terms of the reduction in the cost of borrowing would be transferred to this gold reserve fund. However, now that no SGBs are being issued, there are no such benefits for the government, and so there's no money left to transfer to this fund. While the government was able to transfer about a little more than rupees 3,500 crore to this fund in 2023-24, it was able to hike this amount substantially to 28,600 crore or so in 2024-25. But after a year of no new bond receipts, it has budgeted just 697 crore to this fund in 2025-26. Any payments it needs to make on the bonds over and above this will have to come from other resources that were not originally earmarked for this purpose. So, overall, the sovereign gold bond scheme has not been able to slow gold imports and has also turned out to be more expensive for the government than it originally expected. But on that note, that's all from me. Thank you for watching.